Brandon, please do so. I'm supposed to have the little instrument that does the click, click. There you go, because it's a PowerPoint presentation and so on. I'm glad, believe you me, beloved, when I decided to do messages on Ecclesiastes, I did not know in what kind of a ship I was embarking. But it's delicious. I like the work, and I like to keep a balance also in trying to get these messages to make sense and so on. So if you have your Bible with me tonight, I would like to ask you to abide in Ecclesiastes in chapter 2, from 12 to 26 tonight. We'll cover the message with this here. We have a few newcomers and so on, so we are still laboring on Ecclesiastes, and we call it the demonstration of vanity. Okay? Vanity, we have seen what it is. Vanity, it's vapor. When you get into the cold in Quebec or Alberta and you do, there is a smoke coming out of your mouth and it's very transitory. Okay? So that's the vanity, that's the Hebrew word or the connotation of the preacher. We call him Kohelet. In Hebrew, it's called Solomon. We will be on the demonstration of vanity until chapter 6, verse 12. So we have many messages to do on it, but I will have Scott again and so on to give pause. And at the end of April, we will do not. At the end of March, 1st of April, we will take the wine and the bread again in the Passover context. Now, last message 2 weeks ago, we talked about regarding wisdom. And concerning wisdom, the preacher, Solomon, left no stone unturned. He discerned everything, he investigated everything as far as wisdom is concerned. His search for it and his quest for wisdom that was given to him by God, he searched it all completely. His search for wisdom and knowledge led to sorrow and pain. The more you know, the more you are accountable for these things. And I explained to you with carefulness that 2 weeks ago, there is no such a thing as a blessed ignorance. Because the triune God doesn't want his people to be in ignorance. But the more you search for biblical wisdom, biblical knowledge, and so on, the more you have sorrow because of the world that we live into. It's a little bit like the friendship of Abraham concerning Sodom and Gomorrah. Am I going to hide from Abraham what I'm just about ready to do? And what I'm just about ready to do was the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah and surrounding cities. And I've made a challenging statement to you, which I will repeat for the sake of memory and the sake who are joining us right now. I challenge you with a statement that was not easy to swallow to an extent. That if your walk in Christ is without pain and sorrow, you might suffer immaturity. I don't believe in a Christian walk nowadays in top bubbliness. The more you see this world going, including the church within it, the more it creates kind of a cramp in the stomach, saying, where are we going? Then we saw what he did for himself. He planted vineyards, houses, gardens, a mini garden of Edens. We have seen that last week. Many female and male servants, concubine and so on. And looking backward in verse 11, he came to that conclusion in verse 2:11. Thus I considered all my activities which my hand had done, and the labor which I had exerted. And behold, all was vanity and striving after the wind, and there was no profit under the sun. And I repeat this because today it's important to keep that in mind. That the reflection of Solomon, the preacher, he lives on this planet as you and I. And everything that he considers his garden, his concubines, everything, that's the wisdom under the sun. He very well knows that wisdom has a value, but the wisdom that has a value, it's not necessarily the one under the sun, but it's the one beyond the sun. The wisdom that carries with it eternal values and so on. So we need to understand the preacher when he's coming from here in order to avoid the pitfall or pessimism with the message. We do the first part of the message. You come with me in verses 12 to 17. Now this is new unto you. Come with me. Let's read 12 to 17, one shot, and then I come back. So I turn to consider wisdom. Pardon me? Okay, so I turn to consider wisdom, madness, and folly. For what will the man do who will come after the king except what has already been done? And I saw that wisdom excels folly as light excels darkness. The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. And yet I know that one fate, circle the word fate, befalls them both. Then I said to myself, as is the fate of the fool, it will also befall me. Why then have I been extremely wise? So I said to myself, this too is vanity. For there is no lasting remembrance of the wise man as with the fool, inasmuch as in the coming days all will be forgotten. And how the wise man and the fool alike die. So I hated life. For the work which had been done under the sun was grievous to me, because everything is futility and striving after the wind. Now, the preacher, Solomon, after he gave for the last few weeks together, his verdict on wisdom, knowledge, pleasures, and possession, now he wants to have a different look, a different lens in his face, and he wants to talk about the same thing but in relationship to others. Do I have your attention? In relationship to others, and I'm glad because our crowd is an older crowd. You have children and grandchildren, so I need a lot of grace from you right now. Specifically, he wants to look at successors in a moment of time. Despite the vanity of verse 11, which I alluded to, Solomon does not rule out the wisdom from beyond the sun. He does not rule this out. He will realize soon that this is only the way of happiness and so on. Let's pause for a moment. Perhaps a good thought for us to entertain in our mind right now is ask yourself the question silently. What do we pass on to our future generations, including your loved ones and all the people? What do we pass on? You have the answer already, just by the way that the message is communicated right now. Do we pass on both the wisdom under the sun? Is it the primary focus? I'm afraid it is the answer. If you are honest with me, you should say yes, but don't say yes. Or we pass on the wisdom behind that star here, which is the very abode of God. Is this what we pass on to future generation? And I would like to have this on the back burner for the rest of the message until 11 tonight. Are we careful to exercise a good balance in passing down higher values and fading values? Higher values with fading values. Are we faithful, or are we seeking to pass on both? Or at least to have a good balance between the two. Look at verse 14a. The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. Right there, you have a wonderful example where the Old Testament scriptures shed light on the New Testament scriptures. Having said that, don't miss your place in Ecclesiastes. I will read a passage with the word of Christ because I would like to correlate a little bit more my messages with the word of Christ. Come with me now. Matthew chapter 6, 19 to 23. Listen closely, because there is a difficult saying here. I will read 14 again, A. The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fools walk in darkness. The fools basically, or the fool is the unbeliever. Verse 19. Do not store up for yourself treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in or steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eyes is the lamp, or the eye is the lamp of the body. The eye is the lamp of your body, directing your body to walk in a certain way. So then, if your eye is clear or single, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. And listen to the difficult saying. If then the light that is in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? What does it mean? If your focus is only this here, you might call it light, but it's not worthwhile. Because limited our thinking, and it's very difficult for me to bring a message like this in North American people. We are so materialistic. Overwhelmingly. Specifically in our country and our neighboring countries as well. So if it's limited here, there is a potential for great deception in life and so on. So that's another passage that shed lights with the word of Christ. And in 14b it says, and yet I know that one fate befalls them both here. Okay? It's a sad reality. It depends, I don't know the word that you have here. Fate, F-A-T-E, not faith, but fate is not the best word. We prefer the word lot. And the lot of them both, it's eventually, be it wise in both ways or unwise completely, both people die. Same destiny as far as the body is concerned. Because in verse 15, then I said to myself, as is the fate of fool, it will also befall me. Why then have I been extremely wise? So I said to myself, this too is vanity. Be with me. Death here is the leveler. Okay? And it's only applicable in this passage here because God allows the wise and the fool to die physically. Only in this respect it becomes meaningless. Because indeed we know from the New Testament that there is good qualities in wisdom. But he talks here, the preacher, about the arena of physical life. It doesn't matter if you go to a hockey game, you don't know who's sitting beside you there. It might be the wisest Christian, and the bench after that, it's an unbeliever, and both dies. It's only concerned with the areas or the arena of life on this planet. Come with me in verse 16. For there is no lasting remembrance of the wise man as with the fool, inasmuch as in the coming days all will be forgotten, and how the wise man and the fool alike die. I wanted to show that to you. What have I done again? Okay, good stuff. Here we have Proverbs chapter 10, verse 7. The memory of the righteous is blessed, but the name of the wicked will rot. La mémoire des justes will be bénie, but the name of the wicked en français, the no good, will pourrir. Just to accommodate a person that speaks French. But this is a good proverb, but this is not the norm. It's a good proverb, but this is not the norm. Because we simply don't remember. The statement here in verse 16 cannot be brushed aside, whether we like it or not. Whether we like it or not. Only for a very few, Proverbs chapter 10 is right. It's not for the majority. That's the way things are, and that's the norm. We forget. I'm buying books on one style of student. I'm not praising myself here. I like older authors. Most of my favorite theologians that I buy books from are long dead. Alva McLean, a Baptist minister type of thing. And I receive sometimes these used books and so on, and I go very quickly before I put my stamp and my name in it, untouched and unread. If you buy modern theology, they're touched and read. And the memory of these good, extraordinary, very gifted teachers is disappearing. And it will be so with the work that I do and so on. We don't remember. It's the majority. That's the norm. That is it. So that's why in verse 17 he said, I hated life. That's a strong comment. But it's in the Bible and it needs to be addressed. Don't you think that I would like to cheer you up with a message that God's love you? You know. I'm speaking to a mature group right now. And you know that God loves you. But in the time, Krista and Gord and all of you, that we live in right now, Ecclesiastes becomes a book that has to be taught. Because the more you look at the world outside going, the more you realize that this world is upside down. It's completely upside down. It offers no hope at all. Okay? So that's why when I took commentaries, I said, okay, I'm going to talk about Ecclesiastes because of the COVID-19 crisis, but we don't need for COVID to kick in to address that book. The mature people will testify this of me. Everywhere, everything to an extent let us down. Where you are capable of saying to an extent, vanity of vanity. I like the statement. He says, so I hated life, for the work that had been done under the sun was grievous to me, because everything is futility and striving after the wind. We're not talking to a street person here. And it's not the first time I say that. Solomon was not a poor. Solomon was the richest king past and future. We're talking about the wealthy person that could enjoy everything. But while he was making his garden a few weeks ago, he had the pleasure. But after everything was done, turn around and say, okay, what have I accomplished here? Was somewhat let down only when one consider that everything that is under the sun type of thing. I'm coming back to this for a quick moment here. Okay? I don't know, getting a bit complicated, allow me to be me, dual authorship. The full Bible here is dual authorship, meaning it's superintended by God, and it chose human author to write it, 40 different authors of the Bible, but he never violated the personality. They were not Muppets. So they were allowed to express their own feeling, like I do sometimes. There is a fellow like Elijah that you know well. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. This is Elijah in 1 King. And came and sat down under the juniper tree. And guess what? He requested for himself that he might die. He was off. Everybody wants to be prophet, but he was not happy. And he said, it's enough. Now, Lord, take my life, for I'm not better than my fathers. It's his own will. He is expressing here a rejection, and he is not happy about the work that God asked him to do. So why don't we allow Koheleth, the preacher Solomon, to say for a moment, I hated life. And do you know what? Do you know what's the irony? Elijah was taken. He was the only one prophet that never died. He prayed for dying, never did. Romans chapter 9, verse 3. You cannot be without knowing Paul the apostle. And he wrote Romans chapter 9, 10, 11, and 12, which is the Israelology of God. Look at what he says at the beginning of chapter 9. For I could wish that I myself were accursed. Accursed is the word aram in Hebrew, meaning completely devoted to destruction, separated from Christ for the sake of my brethren, my kinsmen, according to the flesh. This is his pure, wishful thinking. It's impossible. Once you're saved, you cannot become accursed. You are secure in Christ. He's only expressing a thought here, that God allowed him to write it down. So there is a good lesson for us. When you don't feel good and you don't feel to worship and you don't feel to go to church, tell him. He knows about that. Stay home. It's no big deal. He prefers a genuine heart like this than to come with an attitude of grumpiness and not to be there, not willing to be there. It pleases him more. You know that much. That's what happened when we lose our focus on position in Christ. That's what happened. Here, for a moment, Paul is losing his focus. He wished that he would be destructed for Israel to be saved. But he knows it's impossible. Elijah lost his focus. The preacher here, I hated life, lost his focus because for a moment of time, he's only thinking about what's happening under the sun. Part 2 of the message, 18 to 23. Okay? Now allow me freedom here. I'm going to change my style. I'm going to make a few considerations here. I'm going to give you some thoughts. I'm going to read 18 to 23, and I will not stay there too long, and then I will switch it to this here in a moment of time. Romans, it's not there because it's too long. 3 times in verses 18 to 23, you find under the sun. Verse 18, verse 20, and 22. Here, Solomon comments may sound harsh. They will. Yet his comments are way too often realistic and truthful because he's going to talk about leaving legacy to the people after him. Beloved, I'm not going to make eye contact with anybody right now. If you are piling up riches for your children, you might end up being very, very, very disappointed. You don't know how they will use the company that you will leave behind, the cash that you will leave behind, and everything that you has passed down to them. It's better not to know sometimes. You very well might be disappointed. We need to think for a moment in these passages right now that I will read to you horizontal. Horizontal goes like this. It means among ourselves and only under the sun oriented, without for a moment considering the vertical like this, our relationship with God. Keep in mind one truth: to keep an healthy balance between the two is not in man. The word is intrinsic. To keep a good balance between what's beyond the sun and under the sun is not given to mankind. It takes grace and discipline to think that way, to concentrate, to think that way here. Why? Because we still cope with the sin nature. The sin nature is not taken away from us at salvation. There is a battle within us here that wants to do good, but we do bad here. So I'm going to read the passage, make just a few comments, and then we will let Paul decide something. Come with me in 18 to 23. Thus, I hated all the fruits of my labor for which I had labored under the sun. For I must leave it to the man who will come after me. And who knows whether he will be a wise or a fool. Yet he will have control over all the fruit of my labor, for which I have labored by acting wisely under the sun. This too is vanity. Therefore, I completely despaired for all the fruit of my labor, for which I had labored under the sun. When there is a man who has labored with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, then he gives his legacy to one who has not labored with them. This too is vanity and great evil. Verse 22. For what does a man get in all his labor and his striving with which he labors under the sun? Once again. Because all of his days his task is painful and grievous. Even at night his mind does not rest. This too is vanity. Don't say no. If you leave something behind and you have prepared something, sometime you go to bed and you're wondering about your son, grandson, granddaughter, the Joe Blow, and you know that they're not ready. And you know that they might say, that's all he left? Oh, really? And you're wondering. And then you see 2 a.m., 2:30 a.m., and finally you fall asleep. I'm not saying that it's bad, but it could be grievous. Now, you hear that kind of message right now. I can see that all of you is looking at me. All of you without exception, all of you is looking at me right now. And sometimes after a delivery like this, you say, oh man, it was boring tonight. Or, let me be positive, there is an inner excitement. We will finish with 2 songs and you say to yourself, tomorrow morning, I will put all my guts and my efforts to get wisdom from beyond the sun. Tomorrow morning I revise my stuff. Yes, Lord, I want to be focused on the heavenly stuff. Help me right now in the car to stop checking my bank account. And you're talking to one who's checking his bank account all the time. There's nothing in it, but I check it all anyway. I don't exclude myself of this, although I committed my existence to serve Him. Costly sometimes. I would like for Paul to describe your tomorrow morning. So I'm not going to speak. I'm going to read. And I'm going to let Paul describe your tomorrow morning. So let me drink. No, I'm not. I'm healthy. Paul will describe your tomorrow morning. Let's have fun a little bit. Chapter 7 of Romans 14 to 25, and I let him talk. Chapter 7 of the book of Romans, chapter 14 to 25. And see yourself, and put a smile on your face, please. See yourself as when you hear a good message in church and you say to yourself, I will apply it tomorrow. Watch the check that I will send to TSM tomorrow for hearing that kind of a message. But unfortunately, between now and tomorrow night, there is 24 hours and things will change. A check right now would be heavy, but tomorrow night you will revise your position and there very well might be nothing in the mail. Sad reality. Let's Paul do that. For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am of flesh, sold into bondage to sin. Who wrote that? François? No, it's Paul. I thought Paul was godly. Wouch. He was a godly man and very knowledgeable also. Look at what he wrote. For what I am doing, I don't understand. Because I am not practicing what I would like to do, but I am doing the very thing I hate. But if I do the very thing I do not want to do, I agree with the law, confessing that the law is good. So now, no longer am I the one doing it, but sin which dwells in me, present tense, even as Paul wrote. For I know that nothing good dwells in me, that is in my flesh. For the willing is present in me, but the doing of good is not. For the good that I want, I do not do, but I practice the very evil I do not want. But if I'm doing the very thing I do not want, I am no longer the one doing it, but sin which dwells in me. I find then the principle that evil is present in me, but one who wants to do good, because I joyfully concur with the law of God in the inner man. But I see a different law in the members of my body, waging war against the law of my mind and making me a prisoner of the law of sin, which is in my members. I like it. 24. Wretch, man that I am, who will set me free from the body of this death? Do you know the answer to that? Christ will. When you die, you will go into His presence and you will no longer have the willing to do good, and it never works. So this will be your tomorrow morning if you decide by your own flesh to pay close attention to the wisdom beyond the sun. It will not work. Because it has to come by the grace of God. Not by, like Trudeau, when he stand up and speak, they tie your jacket and you need to look sharp because the cam is on you. Crapology. Delete that. It's the grace that counts. The attitude of the heart. Father, I would like to have such a good balance. Would you be kind enough, knowing that it's not in me right now, would you be kind enough to bestow that to me? He might. Now we go to Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verses 24, 25, and 26, and I'm reaching close to the conclusion of our message. 24, 25, and 26. You need to go back to Ecclesiastes. We will complete the chapter 2 in this way. Now, come with me. He changed his mind. If you have a good Bible with you, your number 24 should be bold character, meaning in the Hebrew original text, you are starting a paragraph. Look at this. There is nothing better for a man than to eat and drink and tell himself that his labor is good. This also I have seen that it is from the hand of God. Circle 10 times the hand of God. For who can eat and who can have enjoyment without him, capital H? For to a person who is good in his sight, he has given wisdom and knowledge and joy. While to the sinner, he has given the task of gathering and collecting so that he may give to one who is good in his sight. This too is vanity and striving after the wind. For the first time, it is the first time that Solomon makes a comment about here. It's the first time in the book that he alludes to a wisdom from above here. It's the first time that he reaches beyond the level of things under the sun. Now he goes to higher values, and you will see with me, it's very simple. We do not need to impose sin here, because you have eating and drinking. To impose sin and drunkenness here would be completely off the context. God is interested in mankind. He is very much interested in mankind. God is here. He wants to provide man with the simple joys of life, which is food and wine. Listen to that. He causes the grass to grow for the cattle, okay, and vegetation for the labor of man, so that he may bring forth food from the earth and wine, which make man's heart glad, so that he may make his face glisten with oil, and food which sustain man's heart here. Okay? He wants to bless you with simple things here. Obsession in possessions is vanity. The answer to that is to keep things in balance. So our eating and our drinking cannot be without him. So no enjoyment of any kind is possible apart from him. I'm going to tell you a story. Thrifty is open, Superstore is open, and all the food stores are open. A year ago, a little bit less than this, I met a Christian that is from a legalistic background, and first thing that he told me, I don't understand, the liquor stores are open and the church is closed. And it seems a good statement, but this is completely wrong. Is there anything better in life than a French-Canadian table or an Italian table with warm bread under a little white cloth, with butter melting on it with a glass of wine? It comes from above. And Koheleth says that's the blessing from above. And these blessings, man cannot bestow this upon himself by himself. It has to come from above. And that's why I wanted that bumper sticker. No farmer, no food. You cannot be wronger than this. It's no God, no food. The first that was a farmer in the Bible was Noah. If there is no farmer, God will find a way to feed his people. In the wilderness, I don't think there was farming. And in Petra, at the end of time, I don't think there will be farming there either. Will the people be fed? Yes. Because there is a God above that keeps the sun from the earth at the proper distance, that the earth may be warm enough to create the growth of grain so that you turn it into a good bread and a good wine to enjoy with it, with your lasagna, name it. That's one thing that he says, enjoy that when you can. And there is no need here to see that as sinful. It offers us a different perspective on giving thanks at the food. When you are asked to give thanks in your house for the food, it's not time to pray for Japan. The potatoes are hot, the chicken is hot, give thanks. Give thanks with that in mind. That you have money to buy your food. that you have a good glass of wine on the table, I don't mind if you abstain. It's okay with me if you abstain. But don't be legalistic to teach that Jesus partook of grape juice. Don't do that, please. Don't do it. It's improper. Try as much as you can to drink Welch grape juice and you'll not get your face glisten with oil. You might have to go to the washroom more than one time the morning after. And it's no fun. These things are coming from above. And we take it for granted in that country. So think Koheleth a little bit, the preacher, think Ecclesiastes. Examine your bank account, your wealth. It's okay. But don't forget beyond the sun. And that's what we ought, O-U-G-H-T, to pass on to our future generation. Thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, 10 years down the road, you will buy a garage door with this. Not electric, manual. I love you. I like it. It changed the perspective. What's the perspective? True enjoyment is possible. It comes from Koheleth. It comes from the teacher. It comes from true enjoyment is possible. He had everything. And what was his joy? The family dinner that you're craving for, that you were not able to do because we don't gather together. And I'm pretty sure I will go on any of your home when you have your family, your loved one, the kids, and the table is dressed. There is joy. Give thanks for this. He provided for you, unbelievers and believers alike. It changed the perspective on giving thanks. Man has no ability to bestow it on himself. If it's there, yeah, you might get up into the morning to go to work, but it's God that provided it to mankind, first of all. Then He provided you with a job and the money to still be able to buy that kind of stuff. Man is not the fountain of good. My last song tonight will be Come Thou Fount, a fountain. Mankind is not the fountain of good. Eating, drinking, and getting satisfaction come from the higher source, and we have it here from the hand of God. We should recognize that food and drink as a divine gift. That's why I read you the psalm. I conclude. Walking a life of balance between earthly values and higher values or everlasting values, you name it, can only come by grace. Only by grace, accompanied with a teachable attitude. That's why I decided to do Ecclesiastes on our part, and on your part, and on my part. But we have become unteachable. Christianity nowadays, I know, you share your faith, you share about Abraham, I know. No, you don't. No, we don't. I'm glad that Donna said to me, you don't remember having received a message on Ecclesiastes. It's there now. Let's take advantage of it and let display a humble attitude and a heart of teachability. Then God will start to do something with us. And He will show us slowly, by His grace only, not by Francois's messages, how to have a good balance between the wisdom under the sun and the wisdom beyond the sun. Because you need to exercise wisdom also in that life. But you very well know that material possession lets one down. So, look at what Olga did for me today. I love it. He is asking you, which is impossible, to walk your walk with an eye down and the other one up. Don't try, it's not going to work. She did it. A focus on the higher values, and then a focus on the earthly stuff, an eye on this planet, and an eye upward, the answer, seeking for balance because we are stuck here. And for those who do not sustain a relationship with Christ, it will simply be impossible to do. Because you need a tool that we call grace. As much as you will start to do it by your own, I promise you something outside of the Messiah, outside of Christ, it will not work. Because of the principle of Romans. As Christians, we suffer that. The unbelievers don't have the two nature, the battle of Romans chapter 7. They serve the darkness. But as soon as you become a believer, there is two natures in one person. The self, the fleshly, and the regenerated nature, and there is a conflict. Every time that I want to do good, I never do. And every time that I would like to do so, I never. But it's possible. Sometimes we call it sanctification. When we come to church, when we get into Bible studies, when we read the Bible daily, reflect upon these things, humble ourselves with a teachable attitude, it's feasible to have an eye down and an eye up. Unto better balance in life. And your children and grandchildren also will thank you for these eternal values, which are no longer to be seen. Do you think that I'm going to let Sophia choose her sex? I might have to. Or she will slam the door on me at the age of 16 with my car, probably. But there is no values anymore in this world. You smoke pot, they inject there, on the corner. When you go out here, on the corner there. Rare are the morning that I don't pick up needles on that corner. They do it in front of you. You have received the gospel with it. I trust and believe that you will answer to that gospel of grace. There is only one God and He wants you. And for those who have made a decision already for the Messiah. It doesn't matter the age, Albert. I pick on you just because I know that you're slightly older than me. I'm 60. You would say you're a baby. No, don't say that. I'm not a baby. I don't feel like a baby with my back and so on. But we are still teachable. I sure you hope you are this way. But I'm afraid you're not. I was wondering if I would say it. I told you a month ago. I opened my heart right now. That when I teach Kohelet, that's the Hebrew word, le mot hébreu pour le prêcheur, Solomon. I told you a month ago when I started, because I did donate two messages of introduction, Sue, that I was afraid that it will go here and come out that way. Am I still afraid of this? It's an absolute yes. You have my heart, my honesty. How about singing a little bit instead of listening to that French Canadian? Terry, you're excommunicated right now. Wait, at the end. I need to talk to you in private after this.